Raon was asked by the head of the family whether he truly remembered the contents of the 10,000 Flames cultivation book. Without hesitation, Raon confirmed that he did. The head of the family immediately sat down and said that was enough. Raon was free to leave. After Raon left, a servant asked the head of the family about the cultivation technique Raon had mentioned. The head of the family explained that it was a technique that had only ever been used by the very first head of the Zieghart family. He admitted that he never expected Raon to be able to learn it. The servant then asked about the book, which had gone missing. The head of the family reassured him, saying there was no need to worry. It had been passed down by someone else. Besides, no one else could use that cultivation technique. If not for Raon, the book would have just rotted away on the shelf. After returning home, Raon couldn't help but wonder why the head of the family had given him such a powerful cultivation technique. He felt that even a gold tablet wasn't enough to deserve such a reward. He tried using the technique, but no matter how hard he tried, he kept failing. Seeing Raon struggling, Wrath Spirit suddenly encouraged him to keep going. However, he also warned Raon to be extra careful while cultivating. If someone were to touch him during the process, it could cause serious problems, even paralysis. Raon immediately understood Wrath Spirit's real motive. He just wanted an excuse to disturb him while he was cultivating. Wrath Spirit even asked for permission to do it just once, but Raon firmly refused. Later, as Raon looked out the window, he spotted a servant by the lake. That servant wasn't just any ordinary servant. He was a spy, secretly gathering information on Raon. As soon as the spy let his report float away on the water, Raon swiftly pressed a knife against his neck. He ordered the servant to look at the lake and coldly stated that he had known about the spying ever since the servant first entered his residence. The servant was completely shocked. He had been so careful, yet Raon had seen through him all along. Without hesitation, Raon ordered him to open his mouth and forced a mysterious pill down his throat. Almost immediately, the servant felt a sharp pain in his stomach. Raon then picked up the report and demanded to know how it could be read. He took a few guesses and, to the servant's horror, got it right. The servant asked how Raon knew, but Raon ignored him and continued making guesses, this time about who the letter was intended for. Once again, he got it right. The servant panicked. He had spent years training as a spy, yet Raon seemed to know everything. As realization dawned, the servant suddenly suspected that the pill Raon had given him was rageworm. Hearing this, Raon decided to play along and went along with the deception. The servant had assumed this mission would be an easy one, but he never expected to encounter someone like Raon. Desperate, the servant tried to negotiate, offering to rewrite the contents of the report, but Raon refused. He simply ordered the servant to write exactly what he had seen, though only the parts that his boss would inevitably find out anyway. Then, Raon made an unexpected offer. He asked the servant to become a double agent. With no other choice, the servant accepted. Satisfied, Raon walked away, hoping that the spy would provide valuable information when they met again. Not long after, training resumed. Despite everything, Raon still hadn't managed to use aura. When he arrived at the training grounds, he saw that only 42 people had made it through, barely a quarter of the original participants. Suddenly, Runan approached him. A few days ago, at the Runan estate, she had been told to always express gratitude to those who helped her, and so, without hesitation, she thanked Raon. Raon found the whole thing strange. It wasn't like Runan to act so suddenly. Then, Dorian came over and asked how Raon was doing. He was already struggling during the initial selection process, and now, as an official trainee, he felt like he was going to die for real. Dorian kept complaining about everything that had happened to him, even mentioning how Burn wasn't the top trainee, but to his shock, Burn was standing right behind him. Startled, Dorian froze, while Burn ignored him and walked straight up to Raon. Without hesitation, Burn apologized for his behavior during training. He admitted his defeat, but made it clear that he hadn't given up. No matter how much effort it took, he was determined to stand before Raon again. Burn had made up his mind. He would never back down or surrender. Raon found it odd that someone his age could openly acknowledge both his mistakes and his loss. Just then, Rimmer arrived and announced the details of their new training program. But before he could continue, someone suddenly appeared, drawing everyone's attention. It was a woman, Martha Zieghart. Without wasting any time, Martha asked who the training leader was and told them to step forward. She declared that she couldn't stand the idea of being under someone weaker than her, and immediately challenged them to a fight. Raon stepped up and introduced himself as the top trainee. Martha scoffed, unimpressed. He didn't look like someone worthy of that title. Without hesitation, she challenged him to a fight. Burn immediately intervened. "Where's your pride, Martha?" he asked. Martha turned to him, furious that he had dared to speak to her that way. Burn remained calm, explaining that Raon had rightfully earned his position as the top trainee, but Martha dismissed his words with a sneer and mocked him instead. Despite her provocation, Burn didn't let his emotions get the better of him. Then, Runan appeared, stepping in to shield Raon from Martha. Martha turned and walked away, but it was just a feint. In an instant, she lunged at Raon, launching a sudden attack. However, Raon reacted swiftly, deflecting her strike with ease. Martha's eyes widened in shock. Her attack had been redirected. Without missing a beat, Raon counterattacked, but Martha managed to block his strike. Frustrated, Martha grew even angrier and prepared to attack again. But before she could, Rimmer stepped in and stopped her. Raon hasn't learned to use aura yet, Rimmer stated. I can't let you fight him, but once he does, I'll allow the battle to happen. Wrath Spirit fumed. He was frustrated that Raon had let Martha off so easily and urged him to retaliate with full force. But Raon remained calm. Now's not the right time, he replied. Besides, my strike landed. Next time I'll show her something even more impressive. The scene then shifted to the training grounds. Buren was struggling with the intense training, realizing that it wasn't as easy as he had expected. Meanwhile, Raon, despite only training for a month, had been improving at an astonishing rate. Martha, unwilling to be left behind, trained even harder. Known for her terrifying talent, she now found herself feeling uneasy. So much so that she couldn't even hide it from Raon. When she returned home, her anxious expression was obvious. A servant reassured her, saying there was no need to worry. Raon won't be able to defeat you, he said. He has a flaw that can't be overcome. Meanwhile, Raon continued training relentlessly. Having learned about Raon's weakness, Martha regained her confidence. Smirking, she began mocking him. The servant had informed her that Raon had incredibly low mana sensitivity and still hadn't learned aura, so she had nothing to be concerned about. Instead, she found it laughable. Runan, seeing Martha taunting Raon, immediately stepped in and drove her away. After the training session ended, Raon reflected on how enjoyable his training had been. Back when he was an assassin, the only thing he ever developed was his assassination skills. Wrath Spirit, on the other hand, was furious again. You just stood there and let her insult you? He raged. But before Raon could respond, Runan suddenly approached him. Without a word, she handed him something. Curious, Raon took a bite. The moment the food touched his tongue, both he and Wrath Spirit were stunned. It was delicious. They immediately wanted more. Runan, in her usual calm manner, simply stated, "It's marble ice cream," and then walked away without another word. Raon called out to Runan, hoping to get another taste of the food, but she ignored him and continued walking away. After a week of training, Raon finally returned home. As soon as he arrived, he received a report from the servant. He also asked about the current situation at his residence. The servant informed him that his boss's interest in Raon's mother had started to fade, and it seemed like the servant would soon be summoned back. The servant then asked if Raon was deliberately avoiding learning aura. Raon simply replied, "Who knows? Maybe." Hearing this, the servant left without another word. Wrath Spirit, still curious, questioned Raon about why he was struggling to grasp aura, but Raon himself wasn't sure. Despite his difficulties, he was determined to keep training, even though Wrath Spirit suggested that he should just get some rest instead. Raon opened his window, only to find Rimmer waiting outside. It turned out that Rimmer had come to give him guidance. Without explanation, Rimmer led Raon to a certain place, and Raon had no choice but to follow. As they climbed higher, Raon grumbled, wondering why they had to hike when Rimmer was supposed to be teaching him about attributes. From the moment Rimmer first saw Raon and witnessed his training methods, he couldn't shake the impression that Raon was like an intense fiery blaze, so strong that it resembled magma. Eventually, Rimmer stopped in the middle of the forest. Raon asked why they had halted there, but instead of answering, Rimmer unleashed his attribute, wind. He explained that, as an elf, he had been able to feel the wind ever since he was born. His lifelong desire was to wield a sword imbued with wind so powerful that it could cut through anything, and now he had finally achieved it. Rimmer urged Raon to find his own path and develop the fire he wanted to master. After that, they made their way to another location, arriving at the workshop of a craftsman. The craftsman eyed Raon suspiciously and asked Rimmer who he had brought along. Rimmer introduced Raon as the grandson of the family head, stating his name clearly, but the craftsman simply shrugged, saying he was already retired, unless, of course, the family head himself came to see him in person. However, Raon wasn't paying attention to the conversation. His focus was entirely on the fire he could feel in the workshop. He had seen many flames before, but this one was different. It was exactly the kind of fire he had been searching for. The craftsman finally introduced himself as Valkan. Hearing this, Raon was immediately taken aback. He knew that name well. Valkan was a world-renowned craftsman, famed for his extraordinary skill. Still in disbelief, Raon asked if he was truly the Valkan, the very man who had forged the sword wielded by the family head. When Valkan confirmed it, Raon quickly bowed out of respect. Rimmer, however, casually reintroduced Valkan to Raon, despite Raon already knowing exactly who he was. Then, Rimmer requested Valkan's help in igniting a fire so that Raon could experience it firsthand. Valkan, uninterested, simply told them to go to the blacksmith's forge instead. But then, Rimmer dropped an unexpected piece of information. Raon was Sylvia's son. Valkan's expression shifted in surprise. At that moment, Raon made a direct request. He asked Valkan to let him feel the flames. Valkan remained silent, staring at Raon for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. He explained that he was in the middle of crafting golden charcoal, a special material capable of producing flames far stronger than ordinary coal. He had dedicated the past 10 years solely to this project. Valkan made it clear that he didn't care about Raon. As long as Raon didn't interfere with his work, he had no objections. Raon bowed and expressed his gratitude. Meanwhile, Rimmer and Valkan stepped outside to chat. leaving Raon alone in the forge, completely immersed in the fire before him. This video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part.